Hey guys, it's Friday, July 29th, and the first game of our doubleheader is in Steeltown, where the Alouettes are looking to have a bounce-back game after losing to Saskatchewan at home last week. Anthony Calvillo suffered an eye injury in the first half of that game, but will be back behind center, which is good news for the whole team. They are a completely different group of guys without Calvillo behind center, as was proven in their struggles with McPherson last week. Of course, Calvillo will have S.J. Green, Brian Bratton, and Jamal Richardson downfield as his targets, but joining that extensive list is Kerry Watkins, who missed the first 4 games of the season recovering from sinus surgery. Head coach Mark Trestman says he will try to ease Watkins into the offense, but Watkins is saying he has no plans of coming out once he hits the turf. If he can sink into his groove early, look for him to have an explosive 2011 debut. On the flip side, the defense has got to keep its collective temper under control. I can't even remember how many unnecessary roughness penalties were taken last week, and add in the fine to Dwight Anderson, and it becomes clear that the defense needs to figure out some form of anger management. If they play a clean game, they are one of the better units in my book, but the continued taking of stupid penalties is setting them back. As for the Tiger Cats, the story is running back Avon Cobourne. At least, you would expect it to be. The Owls are his old team, and everybody knows that playing your old team puts a little extra emphasis on the game. He's sitting in 3rd place for rushing yards with 264 and had 2 touchdowns last week against BC. But running against the Owls is no easy feat. They're currently ranked 2nd in the league, with allowing only about 89 yards per game on the ground. It'll be interesting to see if Cobourne can break through the stingy run defense. But after watching the Cat fight at Empire last week, it should become clear that the focus really should shift to Chris Williams, who actually has come in to replace the injured veteran Maurice Mann. Standing at 5'9" and weighing only 155 pounds, he's relatively small for a CFL receiver, but his production speaks volumes. Last week alone, he had 8 catches for 189 yards and the opening drive touchdown. He is also the team leader in reception yards with 250 on 16 catches, and he has 3 touchdowns. He's made up in all kinds of ways for the slow start of Arland Bruce, who has just 104 yards to his name so far. On the defensive side of the ball, the Ticats are going to have a tough time containing Calvillo and his receivers. He's one of those quarterbacks that is excellent at getting the ball away with speed and accuracy, so simple pressure probably won't do the trick. Stevie Baggs and Justin Hickman will have to put in a lot of work to hit Calvillo and hit him often, and they're going to need big help from the linebackers. Every single member of that defensive unit needs to put forth twice the effort and have twice the intensity if they're going to shut down one of the most potent offenses in the league. Do not be fooled by the Owls' loss to Saskatchewan last week. Anyone can have an off day, and I'm sure the Alouettes are hungry to make up for it. Now, I do find this one very difficult to predict, but I think Hamilton will be able to squeak in another win and tie the Owls for 2nd in the East. Now, the second half of the doubleheader will find us in Commonwealth Stadium, where the Toronto Argonauts will be looking to derail the only undefeated team in the league, the Edmonton Eskimos. The Argonauts will be without starting quarterback Cleo Lemon, who left the game early last week due to a nerve-exposing chipped tooth. He will be replaced by his second-year backup, Dalton Bell, who managed to squander an 11-point halftime lead, leading the Argos to just 1 touchdown in the second half. He completed only 13 of 27 pass attempts for 169 yards. I'll be watching for him to try and establish some ground game and some protection before going to the air. And with Chad Cackert and Andre Dury in the backfield, there's a good chance of early success. They will be up against a familiar defensive beast. Eskimos defensive coordinator Rich Stubler did put together the Argonaut scheme last season. But familiar does not always mean easy to beat. The Eskimos are still humble, hungry, and hunting for the respect a 4-0 team deserves. Even with the shuffle that has to take place due to the loss of Greg Peach, I fully expect to see a well-oiled machine continuing to swarm ball carriers and disrupt passing plays the way they have been doing it over the first 4 games of this young season. Now, TJ Hill is still tied for first with 2 interceptions, and while their sack tally isn't exactly top of the chart, the pressure being brought by the defensive line should be enough to help him increase that number by rattling bad throws out of Dalton Bell. As for the Eskimos' offense, Ricky Ray is top of the league with 1,231 yards passing, and Fred Stamps is the leading receiver with 22 catches for 477 yards and 4 touchdowns. They also lead the league in rushing, passing, and total offensive yards per game. They truly have become a pick-your-poison offense. With the emergence of Jason Barnes and Marcus Henry as dangerous receivers, the Argos secondary will have its hands full playing who do we contain. And that's not even counting the running game. Each of the running backs has a different running style, so any opposing defense has to be ready to change at a moment's notice. Jerome Messam currently leads the team with 220 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, but with Whitlock and McCarty both available for this match, watch for the run game to have several different looks. When you add it all together, the Eskimos have the most balanced offensive attack in the league right now, which should prove to be a very difficult feat for a defense that is ranked 7th in yards allowed and 6th in points allowed per game. Speaking of the Toronto defense, I always get nervous for whoever has to play against Willie Pyle. He plays with an extraordinary level of intensity, and he has always been a very physical player. It's always been a tough battle for whomever is matched up with him in the open field, and he is excellent when called upon for a safety blitz. However, I don't believe he should be the chief concern for the Eskimos, not with Koala being allowed to play after the hit on Pierce last week. Will his ejection and fine be enough to keep him under control, or should Ricky Ray be more than a little wary of the new kid with the big hit? Now, I think that the Eskimos know how important it is not to get cocky, and their hunger to earn the jubilation of the fans, instead of simply their satisfaction, will allow them to pull away from this one with another win and go 5-0 for the first time in 31 years.